I'm Hazel Thompson, 29, and I just made the biggest mistake of my life. After losing my marketing job and facing eviction, my husband Ryan suggested something crazy, secretly moving into my wealthy Aunt Katherine's empty Malibu beach house while she traveled Europe. 6 months of freedom, he said. I reluctantly agreed, never imagining how quickly paradise would become a prison of guilt and consequences. Before I dive into this property nightmare, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how my family's desperate decision nearly cost us everything. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. We regret to inform you that your position at Walker Digital Marketing has been eliminated, effective immediately. Just like that, after 5 years of dedication and 3 promotions, I was unemployed. The tech industry crash had finally reached our company, and I was part of the necessary restructuring. Ryan and I had built our life carefully. We weren't wealthy, but we were stable until we weren't. Ryan's contracting business had already been struggling for months with the economic downturn. People weren't renovating homes or starting construction projects, with recession rumors swirling. His steady stream of clients had dried up to a trickle of small repair jobs. "We'll figure it out," Ryan said that night, holding me as I cried. "We always do." Our children, Emma and Liam, sensed the tension despite our efforts to shield them. Emma, at 7, was perceptive beyond her years, asking careful questions about why I was home all day now. 4-year-old Liam simply offered me his stuffed dinosaur when he found me staring blankly at my laptop, scrolling through job listings. "Rex makes me feel better when I'm sad," he'd whispered, placing the warm green Tyrannosaurus in my lap. For 6 weeks, I applied for every marketing position I could find. I had video interviews that went great but ended with polite rejection emails. Meanwhile, our savings dwindled at an alarming rate. We cut every expense possible: no more streaming services, no takeout meals, no new clothes for the kids, despite Emma growing out of everything seemingly overnight. Then came the eviction notice. 3 weeks, Ryan said, his voice cracking as he read the paper. "They're giving us 3 weeks to find a new place." Our apartment complex had been sold to developers planning to convert the units to luxury condos. With our month-to-month lease, we had minimal protection. The apartment hunting process was soul-crushing. Everything in our price range was either dangerously run down or in neighborhoods where Emma couldn't play outside. Anything decent required income verification showing 3 times the monthly rent, impossible without my salary. Application fees quickly ate into our dwindling funds with nothing to show for it. One night after the kids were asleep, Ryan opened a beer, one of the few luxuries we still allowed ourselves, and sat heavily beside me on our worn couch. "I've been thinking about your Aunt Katherine's beach house," he said quietly. My Aunt Katherine was my mother's younger sister and the family success story. While my mother had married young and struggled as a teacher, Katherine had built a tech company in the 1990s and sold it for millions before the bubble burst. She owned 3 homes, traveled constantly, and called only on birthdays if she remembered. "What about it?" I asked, though something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "It's sitting empty while she's in Europe, right? For what, 6 months? She posted those pictures from Paris last week." I nodded slowly, uncomfortable with where this was heading. "We need a place to stay. She has a place that's empty. It's just sitting there on the beach collecting dust." "Ryan, we can't just—" "Why not?" His eyes had a desperate intensity I'd rarely seen. "It's family helping family. She has 3 houses, Hazel 3, and we're about to have none." She'd never agree. "You know we're not close. She and Mom haven't spoken in years." "So we don't ask." Ryan said it so simply, as if suggesting we change dinner plans. "We just go, use it until we get back on our feet, leave it exactly as we found it. She'll never even know we were there." I stared at him, searching for signs he was joking. "That's breaking and entering. That's criminal." "It's not breaking if we have a key," he countered. "Remember when you house sat for her that summer during college? You told me she keeps a spare key in that fake rock by the side entrance." The fact that he remembered this detail from a story I'd told years ago stunned me. He'd clearly been considering this for some time. "This is insane," I whispered, though part of me, the desperate part watching our children's security crumble, was already calculating the possibility. "It's temporary," Ryan insisted, leaning forward, "just until we find jobs and save for a proper place. 3 months max. She's in Europe until November. Would be out before she even thinks about returning. The place has sat empty for years between her visits." For 3 days we debated. I raised every objection: legal consequences, the betrayal of family trust, the practical logistics of moving to a house 30 miles away from our current life. Ryan countered each one with the persistence of a man who saw no other option. "The kids could go to the beach every day," he said. Emma could attend that school district, the one we looked at when we were dreaming bigger. I could pick up contracting jobs in Malibu. Those homeowners have money regardless of the economy. You could job hunt without the stress of impending homelessness. On the day we received a second, more threatening eviction notice, I finally broke. This is a huge if we did this, we'd need rules, I said, my voice shaking. We leave absolutely no trace, everything exactly as we found it. We tell no one where we're really staying, and we're out at least a week before her return date, no exceptions. Ryan's face lit up with relief. Absolutely, Scout's honor. He held up 3 fingers. You were never a scout, I said, but I didn't stop him when he pulled me into a tight embrace. That night I lay awake wondering if desperation had finally broken my moral compass completely. Yet as I listened to Emma cough in her sleep, the mold in our apartment aggravating her mild asthma, I convinced myself we were making the only choice possible for our children. The morning of our move dawned bright and clear, almost mockingly perfect. We'd rented a small U-Haul for our essential belongings, telling the kids we were going on an adventure. The rest of our things would go into a storage unit, the last expense we could justify before our bank account hit critically low levels. Where are we going, Mommy? Emma asked as she clutched her backpack filled with treasured books and toys. Somewhere special, I answered, my stomach churning with anxiety, just for a little while, until we find our new home. The drive to Malibu took longer than expected with the moving truck. Each mile increased my dread. What if the key wasn't there anymore? What if neighbors spotted us and called police? What if Katherine had installed security cameras since my last visit? When we finally turned onto the private road leading to Katherine's beach house, I felt physically ill. The homes here exuded wealth, modern architectural masterpieces with walls of glass facing the Pacific Ocean. Whoa, Ryan whispered as Katherine's house came into view. It was just as impressive as I remembered, a 3-story contemporary structure with expansive decks and a private staircase leading directly to the beach. Stay in the truck with the kids, I instructed Ryan, my voice tight. I'll check for the key first. Heart pounding, I walked around to the side entrance, trying to appear casual in case any neighbors were watching. The fake rock was still there, weathered but undisturbed in a bed of succulents. With trembling fingers I turned it over. The key gleamed in the sunlight. Minutes later we stood in the soaring great room with its panoramic ocean view, the sound of crashing waves audible through the walls of glass. The house was immaculate, professionally cleaned and maintained despite Katherine's absence. Emma and Liam ran from room to room in wide-eyed amazement. Is this a hotel? Liam asked, pressing his face against the glass to watch seagulls swoop over the waves. Look at this room, Emma called from upstairs. It has a princess bed. Ryan set down the box he was carrying and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. See, this is what they deserve, not some moldy apartment or dangerous neighborhood. I nodded mutely, still unable to shake my unease. We established ground rules immediately. The master suite was off limits. We would use one of the 4 guest bedrooms. No using anything from Katherine's office. All food and supplies we brought in would be stored together, separate from anything already in the house. Shoes off at all times on the white carpets. Everything returned to its exact position if we needed to move it. We're just borrowing the space, I reminded everyone. Like camping indoors, we leave no trace. Despite my anxiety, it was impossible not to be seduced by the luxury surrounding us. The first night, with the kids finally asleep in their temporary bedroom, Ryan and I stood on the deck overlooking the moonlit ocean. Can you believe this view? Ryan whispered, pulling me close. When was the last time we saw the kids this happy? It was true. Even after just one day, there was a lightness to Emma and Liam I hadn't seen in months. The constant worry that had creased Emma's small forehead had vanished as she collected seashells on our private beach access. Liam had laughed until he hiccuped when Ryan had chased him through the shallow waves. Gradually, over that first week, my rigid anxiety began to soften. We settled into a routine that felt surreal in its perfection. Mornings started with breakfast overlooking the ocean. Ryan began making calls to wealthy Malibu homeowners, securing small repair jobs that paid better than anything available in our old neighborhood. I set up my laptop on the deck, applying for marketing positions with renewed confidence, no longer paralyzed by immediate housing fears. The children thrived. Emma's cough disappeared completely. Liam, usually shy and clingy, grew bold, exploring tide pools and building elaborate sandcastles. We enrolled them in free summer activities at the local library, careful to use our old address on all paperwork. In the evenings, we walked the beach as the sun set, collecting perfect sand dollars and unusual shells. We spotted dolphins playing in the waves and watched pelicans dive for fish. For the first time in over a year, we felt like a family enjoying life rather than merely surviving it. 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. Ryan secured a substantial contracting job renovating a tech executive's pool house, a gig that would cover our storage unit fees and living expenses for months. I met a guy today who needs his entire kitchen redone, Ryan told me one evening, his eyes bright with excitement. He said his neighbor mentioned needing work too. Word of mouth, babe. I could rebuild my business here. I'd received promising responses from 2 marketing firms in Santa Monica, easy commuting distance from our temporary paradise. The initial panic and guilt began to fade, replaced by a dangerous complacency. Maybe this was meant to be, Ryan suggested one night as we sipped wine on the deck watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks. Maybe this is the universe giving us the break we needed to get back on our feet. I wanted desperately to believe him. When Emma created a beautiful watercolor of the beach view and asked if she could hang it on the refrigerator, I hesitated only briefly before nodding. When Liam arranged his toy dinosaurs on the living room coffee table in an elaborate scene, I didn't immediately ask him to put them away. We were becoming comfortable, too comfortable. We'll be out in plenty of time, Ryan reassured me whenever I expressed concern. Katherine's not due back for months. This is just a stepping stone. I chose to believe him because the alternative, acknowledging we were committing a crime that could tear our family apart, was too frightening to consider. The luxury surrounding us made it easy to pretend we belonged there, that we weren't living a fragile lie that could shatter at any moment. The first sign of trouble came exactly 2 months into our stay. I was returning from a grocery run when a woman approximately in her 60s approached me in the driveway. My heart nearly stopped. "Hello there," she called cheerfully, waving as she walked up the gentle slope from the neighboring property. "I'm Martha Wilson from next door. I don't think we've officially met yet." I set down my grocery bags, forcing my face into what I hoped was a casual smile. "Hi Martha, I'm Hazel. So nice to finally catch you. I've seen your little ones playing on the beach. Beautiful children." Martha had the polished appearance of wealth, tastefully highlighted hair, subtle jewelry that I suspected cost more than our old apartment's annual rent, and the confident air of someone accustomed to belonging. "Thank you," I managed, fighting the urge to grab my groceries and run inside. "Are you related to Katherine?" Martha asked directly. She never mentioned family would be using the house while she's in Europe. My mind raced through possible responses. A complete lie seemed dangerous. This woman clearly knew Katherine well enough to be aware of her travel plan. "I'm her niece," I said, which was at least true. "We're house-sitting for a while." "How lovely. Katherine's been posting the most amazing photos from her European adventure. That woman never slows down, does she? I think she's in Greece now after Italy and France." My stomach clenched. I hadn't considered that Katherine would be documenting her travels online where neighbors could follow along. How much communication did they maintain while she was away? "She's having a wonderful time," I agreed vaguely. "The Mediterranean has always been her favorite." "Well, we must have you all over for drinks sometime soon. My husband George would love to meet you." Martha's gaze fell on my grocery bags. "Don't let me keep you with ice cream melting. Just wanted to say hello finally." That night I told Ryan about the encounter while the kids were building a blanket fort in the guest room. "It's fine," he assured me, though I noticed a new tension in his shoulders. "You handled it perfectly. We're her niece and family watching the house. It's close enough to the truth." Martha mentioned following Katherine's travel photos online. She knows exactly where Katherine is and probably when she's coming back. And now she's invited us for drinks. What if she mentions us to Katherine in an email or comment? Ryan poured himself a glass of Katherine's expensive whiskey, another rule broken as our boundaries continued to slip. "If she does, we'll deal with it then. Katherine rarely responds to people while traveling. You've said so yourself." His dismissive attitude bothered me, but I was too exhausted to argue. The precarious nature of our situation was becoming increasingly apparent, yet we'd carved out something resembling stability. Ryan's contracting work had steadily increased, with wealthy clients paying well for quality craftsmanship. I'd secured freelance marketing work that could be done remotely, helping a startup with their social media strategy. The children had settled in completely. Emma had made friends with a girl from the library's reading program, while Liam had become obsessed with marine biology after our tide pool explorations. They no longer asked when we'd be going to our real home. This was becoming our real home, and that terrified me. Despite my concerns, we continued to embed ourselves deeper into temporary lives. Our careful rules eroded bit by bit. Emma's artwork now decorated the guest room walls. Ryan had moved furniture to create a better flow in the living room. I'd begun using Katherine's premium cookware and serving dishes. Then came the damages. First, it was small. Emma spilled cranberry juice on the cream-colored area rug in the living room. Despite immediate cleaning, a faint pink shadow remained. I moved a decorative table to cover the spot, promising myself we'd have it professionally cleaned before leaving. Next, Ryan cracked the edge of a marble bathroom counter when he dropped a heavy tool while fixing the sink. He filled it with matching epoxy, assuring me it was nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Liam's incident was harder to conceal. While playing superhero, he had swung from the decorative curtains in the dining room, pulling the entire rod and fixture from the wall and leaving noticeable damage to the custom wallpaper. Each incident intensified my anxiety, yet we continued our charade until the postcard arrived. I found it while collecting the mail, something I'd started doing to intercept any important documents Katherine might receive. The colorful image of Santorini's blue domes was addressed to the Thompson family, with our old apartment address crossed out and Katherine's beach house address written below. It was from my mother, who had no idea where we were actually staying. Having a wonderful time in Greece, we unexpectedly ran into Katherine at our hotel in Santorini yesterday. Such a small world. She mentioned cutting her trip short and returning to Malibu next month instead of November. She looks fantastic and sends her love. Hope all is well with you and the kids. Love, Mom. I read the postcard 3 times, my hands shaking more with each reading. My mother had unwittingly exposed us, and now Katherine was returning months earlier than planned. When I showed Ryan the postcard that evening, his face drained of color. Next month? That's only a few weeks away. Exactly, I hissed, conscious of the children playing nearby. We need to start looking for a place immediately. But Ryan's expression shifted from shock to something more calculating. Or we could stay. What, did you not hear me? Katherine is coming back. Not for weeks, Ryan argued. We can't just leave now. I have 3 ongoing projects with clients here. You have your freelance work, the kids are settled. Let's not panic. This isn't panic, it's reality, I snapped, louder than intended. Emma glanced over at us, her brow furrowing with concern. Let's discuss this later, Ryan said firmly, moving to join the children in their game. That night we had our first major argument since moving into the beach house. Ryan wanted to wait until we received direct communication from Katherine before making any moves. I insisted we needed to begin preparing immediately. We always knew this was temporary, I reminded him. But we're not ready yet, he countered. The timing is all wrong. My biggest client payment won't come through until the end of next month. That's not Katherine's problem. This is her house, Ryan. We're the ones who made the choice to take it without permission. As we argued in hushed voices on the deck, I realized how differently we now viewed our situation. What had started as a desperate, temporary measure had morphed into something else entirely in Ryan's mind. He spoke as if we had rights to this place, as if Katherine was the inconvenient party in the scenario. Her family has 3 houses, he said bitterly, echoing his original justification. 3 houses that sit empty most of the year while families like ours struggle to keep a roof over our heads. The system is broken, Hazel. We're just doing what we need to survive. Looking at my husband in the moonlight, I barely recognized the man I'd married. The Ryan I knew valued honesty and hard work. Now he sounded entitled to something that had never belonged to us. This isn't us, I said quietly. This isn't who we are. Maybe it should be, he replied. Maybe we've spent too long playing by rules that were designed to keep us down. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, realizing the fairy tale we'd been living had corrupted us in ways I hadn't anticipated. Our moral compromise hadn't just changed our address, it was changing who we were as people. 3 months into our stay, the fantasy life we'd constructed began to show serious cracks. Outwardly, we appeared to be thriving. Ryan's contracting business had gained enough wealthy clients that he was considering hiring an assistant. My freelance marketing work had expanded to 3 steady clients. The children were tanned and happy, spending their days between the private beach and various community activities we'd enrolled them in. We'd even begun socializing with neighbors. Despite my initial reservations, that's how we found ourselves hosting a dinner party one warm evening in August, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. Your aunt's home is absolutely stunning, commented Lisa, a local real estate agent whose husband had hired Ryan to renovate their deck. The original architect won awards for this design. Thank you, I replied automatically, as if I had any right to accept compliments for Katherine's property. The ocean view never gets old. I was just telling George that Katherine should consider letting me list it if she ever decides to sell, Martha chimed in, swirling her wine. Beachfront properties in this particular stretch are going for astronomical amounts right now. My heart skipped. Oh, I don't think she's interested in selling. Probably not, Martha agreed, but I'll mention it when I email her about the community fundraiser next month. We're hoping she'll be a sponsor again this year, even if she can't attend in person. Ryan smoothly changed the subject, but the damage was done. The walls of our fantasy were closing in. Martha was planning to contact Katherine directly and soon. After our guests left, I confronted Ryan in the kitchen. Did you hear what Martha said? She's going to email Katherine about the fundraiser. She'll probably mention meeting us. Ryan continued loading the dishwasher, using Katherine's expensive crystal with casual familiarity. Martha's emails will likely go to Katherine's assistant first. Besides, Katherine knows you're her niece. Even if Martha mentions meeting you, it's not automatically suspicious. Except for the part where Katherine never gave us permission to be here, I shouted, conscious of the children sleeping upstairs. Ryan straightened, his expression hardening. You know what I realized tonight? These people are neighbors, Martha, Lisa. They own multiple properties. They talk about their vacation homes and investment properties while families like ours get eviction notices. The system is rigged, Hazel. Katherine has 3 houses, 3. She doesn't need this one right now, we do. His attitude terrified me. What had started as a desperate temporary measure had morphed into righteous entitlement in his mind. This isn't about economic justice, Ryan. This is about us making a choice that has consequences. Legal consequences, relationship consequences. I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. We agreed this was temporary, a stepping stone. Before he could respond, my phone chimed with an email notification. I glanced at it automatically, then froze. What is it? Ryan asked, noticing my expression. I wordlessly held up my phone. The email was from Katherine's personal account. Hazel, hope you and the family are well. Surprise, I've decided to come back to Malibu earlier than planned. I'll be arriving in 2 weeks rather than November. Europe was lovely, but I'm homesick for my beach. Looking forward to catching up, Katherine. Ryan read it twice, his face draining of color. 2 weeks? That's not enough time. My client payments won't all process by then, and we haven't even started looking for a new place. The reality of our situation hit us both like a physical blow. We had 2 weeks to find housing, move out, and somehow erase all evidence of our extended stay, including damage to the property we couldn't easily fix. We need to start looking for apartments immediately, I said. Tomorrow morning. Ryan paced the kitchen. We can't just leave. I have client commitments, contracts. My business is finally taking off. Those clients hired you knowing you're local. What happens when they find out you were essentially squatting in a relative's house without permission? What happens to your reputation then? We should just come clean, Ryan said suddenly. Tell Katherine the truth when she arrives. Explain our situation. She's family, she might understand. The family she hasn't spoken to in years? I reminded him. The aunt who didn't even attend my mother's surgery last year? That family? We could offer to pay rent retroactively, Ryan suggested desperately. I'm making good money now. We could afford something. Or she could press charges for breaking and entering, property damage, and whatever else her expensive lawyers come up with. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Our argument was interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. Are we in trouble? Emma stood there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her small face was creased with worry. I immediately moved to her, kneeling down. No, sweetie. Mommy and Daddy are just having a grown-up discussion about some changes coming up. I heard you saying we have to leave, she said, her voice wobbling. Is this not our house anymore? The innocent question cut through all our adult rationalizations. Ryan and I exchanged pained glances over her head. This was always a temporary home, remember? I said gently. We're going to find our own special place soon. But I told Ms. Janice at school that we live in a beach house, Emma said, referencing her summer program teacher. I showed pictures for my home project. My blood ran cold. What pictures, sweetie? The ones Daddy took of us on the beach and inside the house with the big windows. Emma's lip trembled. Did I do something wrong? No, honey, of course not, Ryan rushed to assure her, though his panicked eyes met mine. We had specifically told the children not to tell anyone where we were actually living, but she was 7, how could we expect her to maintain such a complicated deception? After settling Emma back to bed, the hits kept coming. An email from Emma's teacher appeared in my inbox, requesting a parent conference to discuss Emma's confusion about her living situation. Then came the background check form from a potential full-time employer who'd been impressed with my freelance work. They needed verification of my current address and residence history for the past 5 years. Later that night, as Ryan slept fitfully beside me, I slipped out to the beach. The moon illuminated the gentle waves as I sat on the sand, tears streaming down my face. The beautiful prison we'd created was collapsing around us. Every lie required another lie to support it, creating an unsustainable structure that was bound to fall. My breathing came in short gasps as a full anxiety attack took hold. What had we done? How would we explain this to the children, to Katherine, to employers and friends and family? The magnitude of our deception felt crushing. As the panic subsided into exhausted clarity, I realized we had lost more than our moral compass in this beach house. We had lost ourselves. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden light across Katherine's pristine kitchen. The ocean sparkled beyond the deck, pelicans diving for their breakfast in the distance. The scene was postcard perfect, utterly belying the chaos about to erupt in our lives. Ryan had left early for a job site, taking the children with him to help while I researched available apartments online. The rental market remained brutal, with prices far exceeding what we could afford even with our improved income situation. We needed more time we no longer had. The house phone rang, startling me. Few people had this number, and we rarely answered it for obvious reasons. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my heart stop. Katherine Thompson. My first instinct was to let it ring, but a terrible certainty told me this call would only be the first. Better to face the music now alone than have her continue calling when Ryan and the children were home. With trembling fingers, I picked up the receiver. Hello? A brief pause. Who is this? Katherine's crisp voice was exactly as I remembered it, authoritative and slightly impatient. It's Hazel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Your niece. Another pause, longer this time. Hazel, why are you answering my house phone? My mind raced through possible explanations, each more implausible than the last. The truth clawed its way up my throat. We're staying here temporarily. You're what? The shock in her voice was unmistakable. Who authorized this? No one, I admitted, closing my eyes against the tide of shame. We were desperate, Katherine. We lost our apartment, I lost my job. We had nowhere to go. So you broke into my home? Her voice had gone dangerously quiet. We used the spare key, I said weakly, knowing how pathetic the distinction sounded. We were going to be out before you returned in November. We just found out you're coming back early. I'm well aware of when I'm returning to my own home, Katherine replied icily. What I'm struggling to understand is why my security system has been showing movement in my house for months, and why my niece thought it appropriate to move in without permission. My blood ran cold. Security system? Did you think I wouldn't have cameras on a multi-million-dollar beachfront property? I've been watching you and your family enjoy my home for weeks, trying to figure out who you were. The footage isn't clear enough for facial recognition from my monitoring app. I had to call neighbors to confirm my suspicions. The floor seemed to sway beneath me. We had been watched the entire time. Every private moment, every damaged item, every rule broken, all recorded. Katherine, I'm so sorry, I began, but she cut me off. You have 48 hours to vacate my property before I contact the police. I've already spoken to my attorney about pressing charges. Please, I begged, panic rising in my throat. We have 2 small children. We just need a little more time to find a place. You should have thought about your children before you decided to become criminals, she said coldly. 48 hours, Hazel, not a minute more. The line went dead. I sat motionless, the phone still clutched in my hand, as the full weight of reality crashed down upon me. Not only had we been discovered, but evidence of our trespass had been accumulating for months. Katherine could ruin us completely if she chose to criminal charges. Public humiliation, potential loss of custody, the life we'd been rebuilding would be destroyed. When Ryan returned with the children hours later, I was still sitting at the kitchen island, surrounded by apartment listings I'd printed but could barely focus on. Mommy, look, Liam ran to me, proudly displaying a collection of unusually shaped rocks. Daddy said we can make an art project with these. Emma followed more slowly, her perceptive eyes noting my expression. What's wrong? Ryan set down his tool bag, instantly alert to the tension in the room. Kids, why don't you go sort those rocks on the deck? Mom and I need to talk for a minute. Once they were outside, Ryan turned to me. What happened? Katherine called. I could barely form the words. She knows everything, Ryan. They have security cameras. She's been watching us the whole time. The color drained from his face. What did she say? We have 48 hours to get out or she's calling the police and pressing charges. My voice broke. She's already talked to her lawyer. Ryan's initial shock quickly morphed into defiance. She's bluffing. She wouldn't really call the cops on family. You don't know her like I do, I countered. She absolutely would, and why shouldn't she? We broke the law, Ryan. We damaged her property. We lied to everyone for months. We were desperate. he shouted, then immediately lowered his voice, glancing toward the deck where the children played. What were we supposed to do, live in our car? We should have asked her for help directly, I said, the realization coming too late, or stayed with my parents temporarily, or found a short-term rental, even if it was far from ideal, anything but this. Ryan paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Where are we supposed to go in 48 hours? It's impossible. We don't have a choice. I gathered the scattered apartment listings. We need to start packing now. We'll take what we absolutely need and put the rest in storage. Maybe we can find a weekly hotel until we secure a permanent place. Ryan's expression darkened. So we just give up? After all the progress we've made here, my business is finally taking off. Your freelance work is steady, the kids are happy. It was never real, I said quietly. None of this was ever really ours. I say we stay. Ryan's jaw set stubbornly. Force her to actually call the police. Make her physically remove us. That would look terrible for her, a wealthy woman throwing her family with young children onto the street. I stared at him, horrified. Are you serious? You want to put our children through a police eviction? Have them watch their parents being handcuffed? Maybe go into emergency foster care while we're processed for criminal charges? The reality of what he was suggesting finally seemed to penetrate. Ryan collapsed onto a kitchen stool, his head in his hands. What have we done, Hazel? He whispered. Before I could answer, Emma's scream pierced the air. We both rushed to the deck to find Liam holding his arm, crying hysterically, while Emma stood frozen in panic. He fell off the chair, she sobbed. I told him not to stand on it. Liam's arm hung at an unnatural angle that immediately told me it was broken. The parental instinct overrode everything else as Ryan and I moved into emergency mode. Ice back, calm reassurances, quick drive to the urgent care center. Hours later, Liam slept fitfully in one of the guest bedrooms, his small arm now encased in a bright blue cast. Emma had finally stopped blaming herself after multiple reassurances and now lay curled against her brother, her protective instinct touching despite the circumstances. In the hallway outside their room, Ryan and I faced each other like war-weary soldiers. We can't put them through more trauma, I said softly. We need to leave tomorrow, start fresh somewhere honest. Ryan nodded, the fight gone from him. I'll call about storage units first thing in the morning. That night I lay awake while my family slept, the weight of our decisions crushing my chest. How had we gone from responsible adults to people who would break into a relative's home and justify it? How would we explain to Emma and Liam that everything they'd come to love about our life here was built on lies? The sky began to lighten before I found clarity. There was only one path forward that I could live with. It would be difficult and humiliating, but it was the only way to begin rebuilding not just our external circumstances, but our integrity. As dawn broke over the ocean, I made my decision. While Ryan and the children slept, I took Katherine's business card from the drawer where I'd found it months ago and went out onto the deck with my cell phone. The early morning air was cool, the ocean painted with the pinks and oranges of sunrise. My hands shook as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring. This is Katherine Thompson. Katherine, it's Hazel again. I took a deep breath. I'm not calling to ask for more time or make excuses. I'm calling to take full responsibility for what we've done. Her silence encouraged me to continue. What we did was wrong, completely wrong. We had no right to enter your home without permission, let alone live here for months. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. I want you to know that this was primarily my decision, not Ryan's. He suggested it, but I agreed. I had options I didn't take. I could have asked you directly for help, or gone to my parents, or found another solution. Yes, you could have, Katherine said, her voice still cold but no longer hostile. We'll be out tomorrow as you requested, but before that I want to make this as right as possible. We've caused some damage to the property that I'll detail for you. I'm prepared to pay for all repairs, even if it takes years. I heard her sigh heavily on the other end. Why didn't you just ask me for help, Hazel? The question pierced me, pride I guess, and we're not close. I assumed you'd say no. You assumed incorrectly, she said after a pause. Family is still family, even when we don't talk often. I'm not heartless. Tears welled in my eyes. The children had nothing to do with this decision. Liam is only 4, and Emma is 7. They actually broke Liam's arm yesterday climbing on furniture. If you're going to press charges, please just focus on me. Ryan needs to be there for the kids. The line went quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Finally, Katherine spoke again. I'm still angry, Hazel. What you did was a serious violation of trust and property, but I'm not interested in sending the mother of young children to jail, especially when that mother is my niece. Relief weakened my knee so much I had to sit on the deck steps. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Katherine cautioned. I have conditions. First, I want a complete inventory of any damage to the property. Second, I want you to arrange professional cleaning of the entire house before I arrive. Third, I want you to meet me there when I return next week to explain exactly what happened. In person. Of course, I agreed immediately, absolutely. Katherine paused again. You said you're doing freelance marketing work now? The question caught me off guard. Yes, for a few clients. And your husband has contracting skills, from what I've observed on my security feeds. He does, I confirmed, unsure where this was heading. I own multiple properties that require management and maintenance. Katherine said, if you're both as good as it appears, I might have a proposition for you, but first, you need to get your own housing and clean up the mess you've created. I understand, I said, hardly daring to hope, and Katherine, I truly am sorry. I believe you, she said simply, we'll talk more next week. When I ended the call, the sun had fully risen over the ocean. I felt lighter than I had in months. Despite the difficult days ahead, the weight of deception had been even heavier than I'd realized. I found Ryan in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast for the children. His eyes questioned me as I entered. I called Katherine, I said, watching his expression cycle through shock, anger, and finally resignation. Without discussing it with me first? He asked quietly, mindful of the children in the next room. I had to take responsibility, Ryan, for all of us. I explained my conversation with Katherine, including her unexpected proposition. Ryan listened silently, his jaw tightening at points. When I finished, he set down the spatula he's been holding. You made a major decision affecting our entire family without even consulting me, he said, hurt evident in his voice. Yes, I acknowledged. Just like you decided we should break into Katherine's house without really consulting me. You presented it as our only option when it wasn't. The honesty hung between us, uncomfortable but necessary. Finally, Ryan nodded. You're right, I pushed us down this path. I was desperate and scared for our family, but what I suggested was wrong. I've known it was wrong all along. We were both wrong, I corrected him. I agreed, I participated. I let it continue even when I had doubts. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. What do we tell the kids? The truth, I said firmly. A simplified version, but the truth. That this house belongs to Great Aunt Katherine and we should have asked permission before staying here. That we made a mistake, and now we're fixing it by finding our own place. Ryan pulled me into an embrace, careful of my injured ribs. I'm sorry I lost sight of what matters, of who we really are. Me too, I whispered against his shoulder, but we can find our way back. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. We found a small but clean apartment with a month-to-month lease about 20 miles inland. It wasn't luxurious or near the beach, but it was honest. We would be paying for it with our own hard-earned money. Ryan contacted all his clients to explain the situation truthfully, that we'd been staying with family temporarily but now had our own place. To his relief, most were understanding and wanted to continue working. We hired professional cleaners for Katherine's house and paid for repairs to the damaged items. That created a detailed inventory of everything that needed attention, from the stained carpet to the pulled curtain rod to the cracked marble counter. The hardest part was explaining the situation to Emma and Liam. As expected, they were confused and upset about leaving their beach paradise. But I love watching the dolphins, Liam protested, his small face crumpling. Our new place has a community pool, I offered, though I knew it was poor consolation for private beach access. Emma, ever perceptive, asked the question I'd been dreading. Did we do something wrong by staying in Aunt Katherine's house? Ryan and I exchanged glances before he knelt to her level. Grown-ups did something wrong, Emmy, not you kids. Mommy and I made a mistake by not asking permission first. Now we're fixing that mistake. Like when I take Liam's toys without asking, she clarified, her brow furrowed in concentration. Exactly like that, I confirmed. And just like you have to apologize and make it right with Liam, we have to apologize and make things right with Aunt Katherine. The simple childhood comparison seemed to satisfy her, though I knew the adult version was far more complicated and serious. On our final evening in the beach house, with everything packed and the house spotlessly clean, we sat on the deck watching our last sunset over the Pacific. Despite everything, I felt grateful for this stolen time, not because we deserved it, but because it had ultimately led us back to our true selves. We'll have our own beach house someday, Ryan promised, his arm around my shoulders, one we've earned. I leaned into him, watching the children chase seagulls on the sand below. I think I'd rather have our integrity than any house, no matter how beautiful. He nodded, understanding completely for the first time in months. Katherine's sleek silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway exactly at noon the following week. Ryan and I stood nervously on the front steps, having returned to meet her as promised. The children were with my parents, who had been shocked but supportive when we finally explained our situation. Katherine emerged from her car looking immaculate as always, designer sunglasses, perfectly tailored clothes, not a hair out of place despite her long journey. At 62, my aunt possessed the energy and sharp presence of someone decades younger. "Well," she said, removing her sunglasses to survey us properly, "here we all are." "Thank you for meeting with us," I said, stepping forward. "Would you like to inspect the house first?" "I already have," Katherine replied. "I arrived early this morning and did a thorough walkthrough." My stomach dropped. "I thought your flight landed at 10. "I took an earlier connection." Her expression revealed nothing. "I wanted to see the place without you present first." Ryan and I exchanged anxious glances. We'd been meticulous in our cleaning and repairs, but what if we'd missed something critical? "Let's talk inside," Katherine said, moving past us through the front door. We followed her into the great room, where she settled on one of the white sofas with the ocean view behind her. Ryan and I sat awkwardly on the couch opposite. "The house is in excellent condition," Katherine said, surprising us both, "better than I usually find it after my housekeeper has been through, actually." Relief flooded me. We wanted to make sure everything was perfect. "Not quite everything," she countered, reaching into her handbag to produce a small stack of photos. She laid them on the coffee table between us. The security system captured these moments, among others. With growing horror, I recognized the scenes: Emma spilling juice on the carpet, Ryan accidentally cracking the marble counter, Liam pulling down the curtains, every mistake documented. "We've arranged to pay for all the damages," Ryan said quickly. "We've already contracted repairs for the—" Katherine held up her hand, stopping him. "I'm not concerned about the physical damages. Those things can be fixed. I'm more interested in why my niece, who I remember as an honest and principled young woman, would choose to break into my home rather than ask for help." The direct question hit me like a physical blow. I was ashamed, I admitted quietly, too proud to admit we were failing, too scared of rejection to reach out. Katherine's expression softened slightly. "Family is complicated, Hazel. Your mother and I have our differences, but that doesn't mean I'd turn my back on her daughter in need." "I know that now," I said, fighting back tears. "I made a terrible mistake." Katherine nodded, then surprised me by turning to Ryan. "And you, what were you thinking?" Ryan straightened, accepting the direct challenge. "I was desperate to provide for my family and made a selfish, short-sighted decision. I convinced myself it was justified because you have so much and we had so little. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry." Katherine studied him for a long moment before nodding again. "At least you're both honest now." She leaned back, her posture relaxing slightly. "Show me what you did with the place while you were here." Confused, we led Katherine through the house, pointing out where we'd lived and the small changes we'd made. Rather than seeming angry, she appeared almost curious, asking detailed questions about how we'd used different spaces. When we reached the kitchen, she ran her hand along the counter where Ryan had organized his paperwork. "I understand you've developed quite a client base in Malibu." Ryan nodded cautiously. "Yes, though I've explained our situation to them now." "And Hazel," she continued, turning to me, "your online marketing work has been gaining traction?" "I have 3 steady clients," I confirmed, still unsure where this was heading. Katherine opened the refrigerator, inspected it briefly, then closed it again. "The house is immaculate. You clearly respect quality spaces, despite your unorthodox entry method." She walked to the windows overlooking the ocean, her back to us. "I've been considering hiring property managers for my 3 homes, someone to oversee maintenance, handle rental arrangements during periods I'm traveling, coordinate with staff, and ensure everything remains in perfect condition." She turned to face us. "The position would include a modest but comfortable apartment above the garage at my Monterey property. It needs renovation first, which would require a skilled contractor." Ryan and I stared at her in shock, hardly daring to believe what she seemed to be suggesting. "Are you offering us a job?" I finally managed to ask. "I'm offering you an opportunity to make proper amends," Katherine clarified. "You'd be paid fairly for your work. The apartment would be part of your compensation package. After a 1-year probationary period, we could discuss a more permanent arrangement." Ryan found his voice. "Why would you trust us after what we did?" Katherine's smile was slight but genuine. "Because you finally told the truth when it would have been easier to keep running, because you took responsibility when you could have blamed each other, and because, despite your terrible judgment, You kept my home in better condition than any property manager I've hired." She held up a hand before we could respond. "This isn't charity. The work will be demanding, and my standards are extremely high. You'll earn your keep and then some. Consider it a second chance you'll need to work for." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you, Katherine. We don't deserve this opportunity." "No, you don't," she agreed bluntly, "but everyone deserves a chance to make things right. My sister would never forgive me if I let her daughter's family flounder when I could help." 6 months later, we stood in our newly renovated apartment above the garage of Katherine's Monterey estate. The space was bright and modern, with a small balcony overlooking the property's extensive gardens. While not directly on the beach, the ocean was visible in the distance, a blue line on the horizon. Ryan had finished the renovations himself, working evenings and weekends around his contracting jobs. I'd taken on management of all 3 of Katherine's properties, creating detailed systems for maintenance, staff coordination, and rental arrangements during her frequent travels. The children had adjusted well to their new school and surroundings. Emma had joined a local children's theater program, while Liam had become obsessed with the aquarium a short drive away. Katherine had proven to be a demanding but fair employer. She expected perfection but recognized genuine effort. Over time, a tentative respect had formed between us, with occasional glimpses of the familial warmth that had been missing for years. "Package from Aunt Katherine," Ryan announced, entering with a large envelope. Inside was a formal contract extending our arrangement for another 2 years with improved terms. "She's coming for dinner tomorrow," I reminded him, setting the contract aside to review later. "She wants to discuss potentially renting out the Malibu property during winter months." Ryan nodded, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Who would have thought our biggest mistake would let us here?" I leaned into his embrace, watching through the window as Emma and Liam played in the yard below. The beach house was never really ours, but this life, this honest life we're building, this belongs to us completely. That evening, as we sat on our small balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything we'd learned. Our desperate decision had nearly cost us our integrity, our self-respect, and possibly even our freedom. Yet through taking responsibility and committing to making amends, we'd found a path forward that was built on truth rather than deception. "I wouldn't change what happened," Ryan said suddenly, reading my thoughts as he often did, "not because what we did was right, but because it taught us who we really are, both at our worst and at our best." I nodded, understanding completely. The easy path isn't always the right one. Sometimes the hardest road leads exactly where you need to go. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, not unlike those we'd watched from Katherine's beach house, but this view, though perhaps less spectacular, was honestly ours to enjoy. What would you do if faced with the temptation of a seemingly victimless crime to protect your family? Could you resist, or would you rationalize your way into a decision you might later regret? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found something valuable in our story, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons learned the hard way. And remember, integrity might not always be the easiest path, but it's the only one that lets you sleep peacefully at night. Thank you for listening to our journey.